The folder landed on the Admiral's mahogany desk with the impact of a small explosion. Coffee sloshed from Wilhelm Canaris's porcelain cup, splattering across intelligence reports that, if discovered by the Gestapo, would mean instant execution. "Impossible," Canaris muttered, his voice tight. "The Americans are feeding us propaganda through turned agents." Beyond the tall windows of Abwehr headquarters, the gray waters of the Landwehr Canal flowed silently, a grim reminder of Rosa Luxemburg's fate 24 years prior. Now, as chief of German military intelligence, Canaris held in his trembling hands a document that threatened not merely Nazi propaganda, but the very mathematical bedrock of German victory. Intercepted communications and reports from agents in Mexico City painted an unbelievable picture. The Ford Motor Company's Willow Run plant was producing one B-24 Liberator bomber every hour. A monstrous creation, the B-24 Liberator was an 18-ton beast of 1.5 million individual parts, held together by 450,000 rivets and comprised of 30,000 separate components. Yet it was rolling off an assembly line faster than Germany could produce even a simple Kübelwagen. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, ramrod straight before Canaris's desk, had triple-checked the intelligence. The numbers were immutable. Neither man could have known that this moment would ignite the greatest intelligence failure in modern warfare. It was the systematic inability of German intelligence to grasp, accept, or effectively convey the true might of American industrial capacity to the Nazi leadership. This blindness, this fatal miscalculation of mathematical inevitability would doom the Third Reich. The seeds of this collapse had been sown 2 years earlier. In 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Kohler had presented Hermann Göring with reports from military attaché General Friedrich von Betticher in Washington, detailing American aircraft production approaching 2,000 planes per month. Göring, it was said, literally guffawed, scoffing that Americans were only capable of building refrigerators and razor blades, not military aircraft. "The Americans are bluffing," Göring had declared to Hitler at the Wolfschanz in December 1941, just 4 days after Pearl Harbor. "Their democracy makes them weak. Their Mongol population makes them inefficient. Their Jews make them corrupt. They cannot possibly produce what they claim." But by March 1943, a different story was emerging from German intelligence networks across the Americas. It was a narrative that defied every assumption of Nazi racial theory and economic understanding. Reports flowed in from disparate sources: Mexican industrialists sympathetic to Germany, Spanish diplomats, Swedish businessmen passing through Detroit, even letters from American workers to relatives in neutral countries. All echoed the same impossible truth. Ford's Willow Run plant was outproducing all of Germany's aircraft factories combined. Oberstleutnant Nikolaus Ritter, head of the Abwehr's air intelligence, spent 3 weeks immersed in the data. A former Luftwaffe pilot who had lived in America for a decade before the war, Ritter understood American industrial power better than most of his German counterparts. His Manhattan apartment in the 1920s had overlooked the construction of the Chrysler Building. He had witnessed Americans erect the world's tallest skyscraper in less than 2 years.
"Herr Admiral," Ritter reported to Canaris, his voice devoid of emotion, "if these numbers are correct, and I believe they are, then Germany has already lost the war. It is now only a question of mathematics and time." The intelligence arrived through increasingly perilous channels. In Mexico City, Georg Nikolaus, who managed the Abwehr's primary network, cultivated sources among American businessmen who traveled freely between Detroit and Mexico's oil fields. These men, oblivious to the German agents transcribing their every word, spoke casually of the miracles they witnessed. On February 3, 1943, American oil executive Harold Morrison attended a reception at the German-Mexican Commerce Association. After several tequilas, Morrison began to describe his recent tour of the Willow Run facility, a visit arranged by Ford to impress potential investors with their capability to fulfill government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison had boasted, utterly unaware that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent posing as an Argentine leather merchant, was committing his every word to memory. "What I saw defies description. The assembly line is over a mile long. The building is so vast that clouds form inside it, and it sometimes rains within the factory. They have 42,000 workers, including thousands of women, Negro women, building the most complex machine ever created." He pulled out a pencil and began sketching furiously on a napkin. "The bomber," he continued, "has 2 bomb bays, each holding 4,000 pounds of ordnance, 4 engines, each producing 1,200 horsepower. They produce them in sections, sub-assemblies, Ford calls them, that converge like rivers flowing into the sea. Wing sections arrive from one direction, fuselages from another, tail assemblies from a third. They meet at precise points along the line." Blau, feigning casual interest, interjected, "But surely such complexity means frequent breakdowns, production delays." Morrison chuckled. "That's what Consolidated Aircraft thought. They mocked Ford, said you can't build planes like cars. But Ford broke the bomber down into 60,000 separate operations. Each worker performs the same task over and over. A woman who yesterday was making breakfast for her children now installs hydraulic lines in the tail section. They train them in days, not months." Perhaps the most astonishingly detailed intelligence arrived through neutral Spain. Colonel José Hungría, the Spanish military attaché in Washington, maintained close ties with American aircraft manufacturers. Secretly, he funneled intelligence to Germany in exchange for crucial tungsten shipments for Spanish industry. In March 1943, Hungría attended a reception at the Argentine ambassador, where he encountered Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief and the visionary architect of Willow Run. Sorensen, believing he was speaking to a representative of a neutral nation that might purchase aircraft after the war, spoke candidly about the plant's capabilities. "Colonel," Sorensen began, completely unaware that his every word would reach Berlin within 2 weeks. "When I first visited Consolidated San Diego plant in 1940, they were building B-24s outdoors in the sunshine, each one different from the last, taking 180,000 man-hours per aircraft. I knew we could do better."
Hungría, claiming professional interest as a military engineer, pressed for details. Sorensen, brimming with pride, obliged. "I spent one night in my hotel room in San Diego sketching out the entire production flow. We would build bombers like we build cars, not by having workers swarm over a stationary aircraft, but by moving the aircraft past stationary workers. Each worker would perform specific tasks repeatedly, achieving perfection through repetition." The Spaniard then inquired about the workforce challenges inherent in such a complex operation. "We built an apprentice school that trains 8,000 workers weekly," Sorensen replied. "Women comprise 40% of our workforce. They're actually better at detailed work, smaller hands for tight spaces, more patient for repetitive tasks. We have Negro workers operating sophisticated machinery. We have boys of 16 managing supply logistics. Democracy, Colonel, means utilizing all available human resources." Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish channels, German intelligence continued to receive consistent reports confirming Willow Run's staggering production rate. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg, after visiting the plant in March 1943, reported, "The plant operates with an efficiency that defies European understanding. They use 1,600 specialized machine tools, many designed for single operations. The capital investment is staggering, perhaps $200 million for tooling alone. Even Japanese commander Toshikazu Omai's coded message to Tokyo, intercepted by German intelligence, provided independent verification. This single factory produces more aircraft monthly than the entire Japanese aviation industry. By April 1943, German intelligence had meticulously compiled comprehensive data from 17 independent sources, all confirming the impossible production rate. The numbers were simply staggering. Willow Run alone was producing 650 B-24s monthly, at peak, with the total American B-24 output exceeding 1,400 per month. Desperate for irrefutable proof, Canaris authorized Operation Pastorius, a daring mission to insert saboteurs into the United States via submarine. George John Dash, leader of one of the four-man teams, had lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939. His secret orders from Canaris were explicit: gather intelligence on aircraft production before conducting any sabotage operations. In the pre-dawn hours of June 13, 1942, Dash's team landed at Amagansett, Long Island, having come ashore from U-202 just after midnight. Within days, tormented by the implications of his mission and what he already understood about American capacity, Dash surrendered to the FBI. During his interrogation, Dash revealed something that stunned his American captors. Canaris himself told me that Berlin doesn't believe your production figures. They think Willow Run is propaganda. He wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping records, proof that would force Göring to accept reality. FBI Special Agent Charles Landman asked, incredulously, "They don't believe we're producing a bomber an hour?" Dash offered a bitter laugh. "Agent Landman, I lived here. I've seen your automobile factories. I tried to tell them that if Ford could produce a car every minute before the war, they could certainly produce a bomber every hour during it. They accused me of being a defeatist."
On April 20, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Canaris personally presented the intelligence to Göring at Karrenhall, the Reichsmarshal's ostentatious hunting estate north of Berlin. The meeting would forever be etched in the memory of German intelligence officers for Göring's utterly delusional rejection of reality. Canaris laid out his evidence: photographs, intercepted documents, reports from dozens of trusted sources. He spread them across Göring's massive oak table like a dealer showing a losing hand. "Herr Reichsmarschall," Canaris began carefully, "we have confirmation from 17 independent sources. The Ford Willow Run plant is producing one B-24 Liberator every hour at peak production. They have achieved this rate consistently since January." Göring, his immense frame weighing over 280 pounds, picked up one of the photographs depicting the assembly line stretching into the distant horizon. "Canaris," Göring sneered, his voice dripping with contempt, "do you take me for a fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, props for propaganda. The Americans want us to believe they can build aircraft like sausages. This Willow Run plant probably produces 50 bombers monthly at most." Canaris, undeterred, produced another document, an intercepted manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad detailing aluminum shipments. "Herr Reichsmarschall, they're consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum monthly at this one plant. That's more than our entire monthly production." Göring's laughter was harsh and derisive. "Then where do they get this aluminum? From their Negro workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been deceived by American propaganda." A week later, Canaris was summoned to the Wolfschanze to brief Hitler personally. Generals Jodl and Keitel and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels were also present. Hitler, engrossed in maps of the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht was preparing for Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, listened impatiently as Canaris presented his findings. "Mein Führer," Canaris said, fully aware he was risking his life, If the Americans are producing 1,400 B-24 monthly, plus equal numbers of B-17s, plus their fighter aircraft, plus British production, the aerial bombardment of the Reich will soon exceed our defensive capabilities. Hitler's response was chillingly characteristic. Admiral, the Americans are capable of mass production of simple goods, automobiles, refrigerators, but a bomber is not a car. It requires precision, skill, dedication. When it took us 6 years to prepare for war, they claim to have achieved this in 16 months. It's impossible. General Jodl, studying Canaris's figures, made a quick calculation. Even if we accept 1/4 of these figures as accurate, the figures are false, Hitler interrupted, his voice rising. The Americans entered the war in December 1941. Building this miraculous factory and achieving this production in such time is impossible. Unbeknownst to the Nazi leadership, Canaris had obtained film footage of Willow Run in operation through American intelligence contacts in Switzerland. The film, smuggled via Spanish diplomatic pouches, offered a 5-minute glimpse of the assembly line in full swing.
Canaris and his deputy, Hans Oster, watched the footage in a locked room at Abwehr headquarters. The camera glided along the entire mile-long assembly line, B-24s in every stage of construction moving past at a steady, relentless pace. Workers, men, women, black, white, performed tasks with mechanical precision. A clock visible in several shots confirmed the timing. "My God," Oster whispered, "it's true." Canaris lit the film with his cigarette lighter, watching it curl and burn to ash. "We cannot show this to them. They would accuse us of creating fake footage or being traitors." In November 1943, German intelligence secured aerial photographs of Willow Run, taken by a Spanish diplomat. Photo analysts spent weeks poring over the images. Their conclusions were stark. Parking lots contained approximately 12,000 cars, indicating 3-shift operations. Completed B-24s were clearly visible at the adjacent airfield. 47 aircraft ready for delivery. The assembly line could be seen through skylights. Aircraft spaced exactly as reported. Rail sidings teemed with dozens of freight cars delivering materials. Hermann Osterreicher wrote in his report, "Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence. Production rate appears accurate. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment." Göring, when shown the photographs, simply dismissed them as clever American photographic manipulation, probably using scale models. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, and the only Nazi leader with a genuine understanding of industrial production, secretly acquired the American intelligence. His diary entry from May 15, 1943, discovered after the war, revealed his profound despair. "If the Willow Run figures are even half accurate, we face not defeat, but annihilation. They produce more aircraft in a month than we do in a year. But I cannot speak this truth. To do so would be my death warrant." Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland and a trained economist, meticulously analyzed American economic data. His report to Himmler in December 1943 was chillingly direct. The Ford Motor Company's peacetime production in 1941 was 1.1 million vehicles. They have converted this capacity to bomber production. At current rates, by June 1944, the Americans will have produced enough B-24s alone to drop our entire 1940 London bombing tonnage every single day. On Christmas Eve 1943, Canaris received intelligence outlining American production projections for 1944. 18,000 B-24 Liberators, 12,000 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 1,000 B-29 Superfortresses, and 40,000 fighter aircraft, a staggering total of 86,000 aircraft. Hitler's response when presented with these figures: "The Americans claim they will produce more aircraft in 1944 than all nations have produced in all of history. It's absurd." By February 1944, Canaris was removed from his position, now openly suspected of defeatism and treason. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was a staunch Nazi loyalist who would never dare contradict Hitler or Göring. But reality, though denied, could not be ignored forever. On February 20th, 1944, Big Week began. The 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, unleashing over 1,000 heavy bombers against German aircraft factories.
In just 6 days, they dropped more bomb tonnage than the Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Adolf Galland, shattered by what he witnessed, told Göring, "Herr Reichsmarschall, I've counted over 800 bombers in a single formation. These planes are real, and they're dropping real bombs." On June 6, 1944, D-Day, over 11,000 Allied aircraft darkened the skies over France. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300 fighters in response. Field Marshal Hugo Sperl sent a desperate message to Berlin. "The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves." By April 1944, Willow Run had achieved its peak production rate. That month, employees working in 2 9-hour shifts 6 days a week produced 453 airplanes in 468 hours, a finished B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. The plant employed 42,331 workers, 11,000 women, 26% of the workforce, 3,800 African Americans, 9% of the workforce, and 1,200 disabled workers, 3% of the workforce. This demographic breakdown would have utterly shattered Nazi racial ideology. The inferior races and weaker sexes were outproducing the German master race by orders of magnitude. After the war, surviving German intelligence officers laid bare the full scope of the failure. Walter Schellenberg testified at Nuremberg, "We knew the truth about American production by early 1943. Every professional intelligence officer understood the numbers were accurate, but to report this truth was to risk execution for defeatism." Hans Bernd Gisevius, in his memoirs, wrote, "The tragedy was that we lacked intelligence about American production. We were drowning in it. The tragedy was that our leadership refused to believe it because it contradicted their racial ideology." The German intelligence officers who dared to report the truth paid the ultimate price. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris was executed on April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg concentration camp. Hans Oster executed the same day at the same camp. Alexis von Rhone was executed in October 1944 for his involvement in the July 20th plot. Only Hans Bernd Gisevius escaped to Switzerland and survived the war. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey, conducted after the war, confirmed every detail German intelligence had reported. Willow Run produced 8,600 B-24s between 1942 and 1945. Peak production reached 650 aircraft monthly, and the hourly rate was sustained for months. The total cost per aircraft plummeted from $238,000 to $137,000. Albert Speer, during post-war interrogation, was asked, why did Germany fail to believe the intelligence about American production? His answer was profoundly insightful. To accept that Ford could produce a bomber every hour was to accept that our entire worldview was wrong, that democracy wasn't weak but strong, that racial mixing didn't create weakness but strength, that women could do men's work. It would mean accepting that we had started a war we could never win. Who would tell Hitler that? Roswell Monroe, the real-life inspiration for Rosie the Riveter, operated a rivet gun on the B-24 production line. She and thousands of women like her had never worked in industry before Pearl Harbor.
"We knew we were building something important," Monroe said in a 1984 interview. "Every rivet we drove was going to help end the war. We worked double shifts sometimes, sleeping in the parking lot between shifts. We had brothers, husbands, sweethearts flying these planes."
The catastrophic consequences of failing to believe the intelligence about Willow Run were manifold. Fighter production. Germany continued manufacturing bombers until late 1944, neglecting the crucial need for fighters to defend against the overwhelming Allied air superiority. Resource allocation. Precious resources were squandered on fantastical wonder weapons instead of practical immediate defenses. Strategic planning. Operations were meticulously planned for confronting hundreds of bombers, not the thousands that actually appeared. Diplomatic failures. Peace overtures were tragically delayed by a leadership that refused to acknowledge certain defeat. German economists, analyzing captured documents after the war, finally grasped the true scale. Willow Run cost $200 million. Germany's entire aircraft industry investment from 1933 to 1945 was a mere equivalent of $400 million. Willow Run's floor space was 3.5 million square feet, while all German aircraft factories combined totaled 8 million square feet. Willow Run's electrical consumption alone was 2.5 million kilowatt-hours monthly. The Americans had built a single factory consuming more resources than entire German cities. The final accounting, at war's end, laid bare the stark reality. Total B-24s produced, 18,188. Willow Run built 8,685 of them. Total B-17s produced, 12,731. Total American aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945, 33,717. Compare this to total German aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945, 94,700. The United States produced 3.2 times more aircraft than Germany, all while fighting a two-ocean war. Historians universally cite the German intelligence failure regarding American production as one of the most consequential in military history. It was not a failure of collection. German agents meticulously gathered accurate, detailed intelligence. It was a failure of acceptance, a leadership that stubbornly refused to believe intelligence that contradicted their cherished worldview. Dr. Gerhard Weinberg concluded, German intelligence accurately assessed American production capacity by early 1943. Had this intelligence been believed and acted upon, Germany might have sought peace 2 years earlier, saving millions of lives. The story of Willow Run carries profound and enduring lessons. Cognitive bias. Accurate intelligence can be vehemently rejected if it clashes with deeply held core beliefs. Ideological blindness. Political ideology can, tragically, override cold, hard mathematical reality. Systemic failure. Intelligent systems that punish unwelcome truths will ultimately be fed comfortable lies. Fatal miscalculation. Underestimating opponents, especially based on prejudice, inevitably leads to catastrophic errors. At the 1985 dedication of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, former Rosie the Riveter Rose Will Monroe met former Luftwaffe pilot Hans Rudel. Rudel, still astonished, asked, "How did you build so many so fast?"
Monroe smiled. "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing fancy. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their best." Rudel's response was a poignant confession. "We were told democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were told lies, and those lies killed millions." In the desolate ruins of Berlin, May 1945, American intelligence officers discovered a final German intelligence report on Willow Run, dated April 20, 1945, Hitler's last birthday.
It read, "Willow Run production confirmed. We reported this truth 2 years ago. We were not believed. Germany dies not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of wisdom to believe intelligence that contradicts what we wish to be true. Let future generations learn, reality does not bend to ideology. Mathematics does not yield to mythology. Truth ignored becomes tragedy." The report was never delivered. By then, Hitler was entombed in his bunker. The 1,000-year Reich had mere days to live, and thousands of American bombers, many forged at Willow Run, delivered the final, crushing argument German intelligence had desperately tried to make 2 years earlier. The verdict of history is clear. German intelligence was excellent. German intelligence acceptance was catastrophic. In that profound failure to believe uncomfortable truths lies a solemn warning for all nations. Reality doesn't care what you believe. Those who deny reality in favor of ideology will ultimately be destroyed by it. Willow Run built more than bombers. It built proof that democracy works, that diversity strengthens, that freedom produces. German spies counted them all. German leaders believed none, and that disbelief killed the Third Reich as surely as any bomb.